I think if there's any topic more interesting than AI right now for managed service providers is GCCs. At least that's what I hear, because in addition to just AI, is this a threat? Is this an opportunity? And I think between Matt and myself, we want to just talk through what our perspective is. How are we helping our clients think through this, this really important, critical kind of part of their operating model? So, Matt?
Yeah, a lot of buzz, a lot of evolution of this term, including the words that we're using to describe it. So we'll walk you through a little bit of, first, what's the role Avasant's playing and how are we seeing that market evolve? And we'll walk through a little bit of how do we sort of capitalize on this opportunity and this wave that's sort of shifting the broader sourcing model. So I'll start off with just what we're doing in this space. You guys know us as a research firm and a data firm, and I think our DNA continues there, right? We're bringing the data that essentially feeds what the future of these GCCs look like. We're providing, I would call it probably the only true independent solution advisory offering, whereas we're prepared to partner with any service integrator, and we're not competing with you in any of these spaces. And so I think you'll find a little bit of a unique sort of offering that we have there. We're helping shape it in a couple different ways. We're helping shape fully formed, what we'll call managed GCCs, where service providers may be doing end-to-end execution. Kevin talked about it. It may be a multi-country solution. And we're doing all forms of what we would describe as hybrids. So they may operate in a build, operate, transform fashion, or they may come where you're sort of cohabitating with the client alongside in a given GCC. So we'll talk about all four of these things, sort of how they're evolving. But let's first of all start and let's define a couple of terms, right? The terms are evolving. We're using the term Global Competency Center. We're using that for a reason. We'll talk about sort of why, but let's first talk a little bit about what it is. So first, what is the new GCC? What is it doing? It's all about agility, the ability to be flexible, the ability to work alongside a client wherever we need to, that client needs us to be. It's about specialization. So what you'll not see is we're not importing commodity work in GCCs, and actually I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's really about hyper-focusing in on high-end talent, whether it's engineering, whether it's clinical, whatever vertical expertise. These are really the vehicles that are being used by the clients today. And it's about operating in a new way, in a borderless sort of fashion. So what we say is they're virtual operating systems for talent, knocking down the borders, orchestrating specialized talent pools, and unleashing new forms of cross-border business and technology. Akshay, talk about what they're not.
Yeah, so I think Kevin talked about it. We've seen this. This is really GCCs has become like a catch-all term for captives, shared services, GBS, what have you. And in those shapes and forms, they've existed for 30 years plus or more, right? Several of the service providers have come out of what were historically captives or offshore outposts. But as we look at, and I think Kevin made that call to action, that we should be looking at really redefining this in terms of what it means for clients and how they should be looking at it. This is not just a GBS. So this is just not a low-cost play. Now, I think that's table stakes. Of course, if you're looking at the best talent pools, you are expecting some kind of a labor arbitrage, but that's not the only thing that you want out of it. It is not just India or Philippines, and we'll talk about it later today. We have to meet the client where they need that specialization, whether it's vertical specialization, whether it's de-risking from a kind of just nearshore, offshore, onshore perspective. So this could be in Spain, this could be in Mexico, this could be anywhere. So I think it's wrong for clients and us and you guys to think about this as just a low-cost outpost that's doing work in some geography. It's also not about commodity work and then forgetting, okay, my offshore team when it wakes up is going to take care of it. I think if we have it has to really drive innovation. It is really truly integrated with the overall operations of the organization. I think there was a question in the audience. A lot of that has to do with the culture, the strategy, on how that's structured and how it's truly integrated. Okay. And most importantly, because I get this question asked from a lot of equity analysts who are tracking the services market. Well, just like SaaS was a threat to this industry, cloud was a threat to this industry. Is GCC a threat to this industry, and is it going to take business away? Not at all. I don't think we see it that way. I don't think clients see it that way. And we have to stop feeding into that narrative for the client that this is a service provider versus GCC play, because it's not. I think it's the managed service providers, the services companies, the tech companies all have a role to play here in terms of driving that innovation agenda forward, in terms of driving that specialization forward, in terms of driving that market access forward. So I think all of those things need to be very, very clear with our clients as we talk to them.
Okay, so how is the market changing? What are we seeing evolve? We'll walk through a couple things. Akshay, you start.
Yeah, so again, what does it change for us in the room here from a services standpoint? I think Kevin talked about 30 years ago, we were started in the subcontracting mode and staff aug mode and all of that, right? And to be fair, I think a big part of this industry has been a people-led, skills-led business, right? But in the new construct, and which further gets accelerated with this push from AI, it's not just the people skill, it is also the process, the technology, the domain, all of that has to come through. So I think, especially if you look at it from a pure just working with the GCC entity and not the parent entity, just don't think of it just from a staff org, like it historically was, right? So it has to be a lot more broader. Right?
So what are we? If we're not selling bodies, what are we doing? And many of us sort of tried to get out of the business of bodies, but infuse the sort of technology alongside it. But what we're becoming in this GCCs is what I would describe as innovation scaffolding. We're building essentially the bricks and the bones for clients to be able to upscale different types of solutions in market anywhere. So the service providers in this instance become the platform. You're building the flexible pipes, you're building the metadata frameworks that allow that unstructured work to flow across borders into different locations. The question is, are you still talent? I think that there's no doubt that that's still the case. The service integrators play a key role from a talent perspective, but it's not hiring 10,000 of the same roles doing the same things anymore. You become an adaptive metadata, we call it a living node inside the talent graph, right? So every single role could be different. A client doesn't have 5,000 of the same positions to source. What they have is very high-end specialized work that they're looking to move inside sort of the client-operated GCCs, but they're also still looking to transform those big blocks of business that you're currently operating in a service model today.
So, am I still tech? Well, you better be. Because, again, to that point that Matt made in terms of providing that innovation scaffolding, all of that domain, and Shobit talked about it, the domain, the process, all the years that you've spent in those accounts, that needs to come together because that's how AI, agentic AI, and the next thing that comes after that, all of that can come together, right? So this is not, again, about replacing humans or the talent supply chains that we've had, but it's also bringing it together with tech, fusing it very nicely with the process and domain expertise, and then kind of allowing it to just work very seamlessly for driving innovation for the customer.
So think of that as AI-infused GCC. We're a clinical coding team. I work in the healthcare space, so I'm a little bit biased in that space. Is operating and paired with AI auditors, or in the finance space where we're operating a lot of GCC transformation, where huge bots of triage 80% of that data noise before it ever flows through that system. Really, both of those pieces are needed to make these future GCCs function. All right, Akshay.
So Matt talked about all the research and data work that we do. Of course, in the earlier avatars of GCC, and again, using GCC is more of a catch-all now, and not really the way we want to drive the definition future forward. But this is something that we've been tracking for a long time, helping clients set up shared services in the past and GBS centers in the past and so on and so forth. But when we spoke with organizations, and this kind of data is looking at the three broad dimensions that they place emphasis on, that they place weightage on when they're looking at this strategy, right? So of course, cost and efficiency, the arbitrage, that's important, right? Process and talent, they're looking for specialized skill, trained talent, looking at in the right numbers, but they're also looking for process innovation, something which our industry has been phenomenal at. And then, obviously, innovation, right? And this has been the challenge in some ways in the last few years. So what you see on the left we've divided that into about 4 cohorts. So somebody setting up a new GCC today, they still place a lot of emphasis on cost and efficiency. That's a given, like I said, right? Now, in certain cases, you may find a lower cost or a benefit of a labor arbitrage. In certain skills, you may not. But some of that is given. But they see how much emphasis that they place on the innovation part of it, also on the process and talent part of it. And then as they grow through that journey, within the first 2 years of their existence or getting set up, the 2 to 7 year mark or the 7+ years, which we would classify in a more mature GCC, their priorities start to change. What this means for us is we need to meet them where they are and where their priorities are, right? So if you'll see, as they're growing, they're in ramping up stage in that 2 to 7 year growing bucket. They need a lot more focus from you guys on the process and talent part of it, right? As they get more mature, maybe there are opportunities for divestitures and carve-outs, and they're expecting a lot more innovation to be driven out of those centers. It's very interesting data on how across different maturity curves or kind of their age, how that changes. Now, what does this mean for us as service providers, right? We polled them on how does working with external partners, not just service providers or service integrators, but also with tech companies, the tech pioneers, the hyperscalers, and so on and so forth. And I think overwhelmingly, they do see the benefit. And I think that's where they want to partner with you, benefit from you, and not just meet you for the labor arbitrage part of it, right? So if you see, almost 50+% is either significantly or moderately enabling innovation, and I think there are a few that we need to work on. But I think that's the big message here in terms of there is a great value to partner, and this is not a compete versus GCC. This is a partner with the client to really make those GCCs a lot more successful. So yeah, so this is just about acceleration of their innovation agenda, bringing all of the process, talent, innovation, investments, all of it together.
All right, so how do we capitalize on this market? I think there's a little bit of confusion on how we do this. I want to talk a little bit about what the opportunity zones are and how you sort of shape your offerings to make sure they can meet the clients where the clients are. So the first thing is everyone here has easy market entry. You have the compliance, the facilities, the payroll, the messy stuff. Clients don't want to do that, right? But they need easy access on how to consume that and how to essentially build their innovation centers around those pipes that you've built. So your payroll's not your IP. Don't be afraid to set up a payroll offering for a client who needs a niche team to sit right alongside your team. I sort of use the McDonald's analogy here. You guys have the plumbing, you've built the plumbing, no one wants to build it, they'll pay you for it. Own the plumbing and figure out how we lease the virtual land in this particular case. You need to think about what I'll call demilitarizing your GCC. We have clients in this case that they're not looking to move infrastructure into their GCC. And, fully operating mature services, they're looking to operate alongside them. They're still looking for clients to do transformation and automation in the traditional services model. But in the GCC structure, we're looking at bringing in, thousands of engineers, right, that have very unique roles, and every role may change. And so it's not as repeatable. And you have to be prepared to cooperate alongside your clients. You may even have to be prepared to cooperate alongside your competitors. And we'll talk about how you do that and how you maximize that. And we sort of refer to that same way as we would a networking environment. This is sort of a demilitarized zone where innovation can take place. So don't build walls unnecessarily around the real estate. The real estate is not what makes up the GCC. You need to have coherent and consumable AI solutions. We all have a platform, I know that. We'll talk about it, the don'ts here in just a second. But everyone has an AI solution. How is it consumable? How does it cost? And what Kevin talked about at the beginning of the talk is, how do we then figure out how much risk has been distributed to the service provider side, and then dial in a commercial model that appropriately awards the service providers for taking that proper level of risk. Shobit talked a little bit about clients wanting to build, but honestly, the real conversations we're having with 80% of our clients is not about building it. It's about how can I partner with someone, then how do I distribute that risk in those partnerships when they may be sitting on my books, they may be sitting on the service provider books, they may be operating in all sorts of sort of hybrid entities. So have that standalone AI pricing ready. We'll figure out how to comport that into your GCC structure, and we'll figure out how you operationalize and monetize that at a much higher margin profile than you'd see any traditional outsourcing deal. Last one I'll say is leverage your creative capital. In these particular cases, many of you in this room came from a GCC, right? I won't name, but many of you were offshore GCCs. So there's an opportunity here for us to run the same playbook that was run in the exact same business models that we're operating today. If you can leverage creative capital in those environments where you are structuring, you're funding, you're designing with that client, you can figure out, and we'll talk through these models, how does this become a revenue generating center, not a savings play or a quick cash flow play for our clients. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go into some of the designs here in just a moment. Stop doing these things. This is just my advice because I have to deal with a lot of service providers in this space. Akshay said at the beginning, we're not in the business of selling bodies anymore. So we have to sort of figure out how to stop packaging the entire commercial model based on the number of bodies that are in the deal. There's much higher profile margin to be made if we do this the right way. Stop worrying about cannibalizing your own work. We'll figure out how the current work fits, and we'll figure out how to grow your portfolio and collapse your competition if you can dial in the model correctly. Stop being 100% dependent on your IP solutions. Your clients are going to co-innovate with you. You're going to see services that never existed before, and you're going to grow those services alongside the client. And stop saying, I have an AI platform. We're aware. Everyone has an AI platform, but how do you construct it? How do you commercialize it? And then how do we distribute those risks?
I think just to add, Matt, I think the stop worrying about cannibalization and the competition. We see a lot of service providers really approaching it from a very defensive mindset, protecting the turf, because again, it's seen as competition between, oh, this is going to take away from my pie. No, I think it's, as Kevin said, this is about growing the pie, and you have to approach it from a very growth mindset in terms of what opportunities can it create for the client, and then of course, in turn, because you're the trusted partner for the client, for yourself. So I think, and we see some investments being made. Oh, well, if you need a facility, we can do the facility. I think the core value proposition here, of course, I think everybody, like Matt said, everybody's aware you can do facility, you've done great facilities and all of that, but the real value is in terms of driving their innovation agenda. The real value is in terms of just enabling them with the right tech, the process, and all of that. So yeah, I think it has to be a lot more of the growth mindset rather than worrying about, okay, let's just try and protect what we have.
All right, so what are clients looking for and why? So we'll talk a little bit about this. And we're coming towards the end of this. First of all, we've talked about it, flexibility and independence. We're going to keep services. Services will evolve. We'll figure out how to do this. But some of this new upstream work that we're swimming into, the clients will need control. You have to have a hybrid model that deals with that control factor. Become the platform, not the fence in the solution is the way we describe it. Moving upstream into some of these very high-end engineering and beyond roles requires surgical precision on how the models are designed to do it the right way. Be prepared for borderless hybrid centers. Some of them you're going to own the outcome. Some of them the clients are going to own the outcome, or you're going to be partnered with that client. And those may all operate under the same roof, right? Slightly different commercial constructs. Not always under the traditional sort of sourcing umbrella. Clients want transformation in some units, but they want carefully crafted partnerships in other solutions.
So again, I think just to build on what Matt said earlier, we don't want the black boxes, whether from a labor perspective or putting out a lot of tech and solution accelerators and service accelerators bundled with the traditional pricing models. We want the ability to have the flexibility, to kind of co-create, co-shape, co-innovate on it, and. So I think we have to, this is probably a new muscle that needs to be developed in terms of just giving them the flexibility and the composability of these commercial pricing models. Part of the reason why clients want to do GCC is they want, or at least historically, if you see, they wanted control. They wanted to have the right equation between risk and control. So even in this, if this becomes too much of a black box, oh, this is bundled in here and how and so on, then they start to lose. You have to give them the illusion of control. You have to give them control in terms of how they can buy and package it and so on and so forth. And the last one, of course, they have to, you have to enable and be very, very open to working with tech pioneers, hyperscalers, and so on in terms of enabling multi-party ecosystems. So very quickly, of course, I think everybody's, most of you now have separate, dedicated GCC practices and so on and so forth. Of course, it's not a new journey. It's been there for 3 decades or so. Just in India, it's about 1,800, depending on how you count GCCs. We have a lot of research, benchmarks, intelligence on GCCs. About 4 million people globally employed, 2 million roughly just in India, and still continues to grow because even after having globally about 4,000 GCCs, 1,800 of those in India, still about only 33% of Fortune 500 have a GCC. Only about 20% of Global 2000 have a GCC. So I think there's a lot more to be done here, and I think we need to be ready in terms of the commercial constructs, the technology constructs, to be able to capitalize on it.
So I know we got the red flashing light, so we're going to wrap up here, but I want to tell a little bit of a story. This will be a fun story. A lot of our clients, here's the glide path that we're walking through. Most of our clients, we want to avoid this sort of black box, this build, operate, transfer, sand trap. We'll talk about this more, but most of our clients are coming to us with a very specific need. They're looking for emerging talent, they're looking for specialized talent, and they're looking to consolidate. They have 9 vendors that are delivering the same set of services. They can't deliver innovation without that consolidation. Both of those use cases are coming into play. And what we're doing is we're designing greenfield solutions that deal with the very surgical, specialized type of talent, and we're building sort of build, operate, almost traditional outsourcing solutions that deal with this vendor consolidation effort. And the virtual sort of, I'll call it greenfield scaffolding, evolves into becoming what we'll call an incubator, a greenfield incubator, where you're helping the client become essentially their own operating entity. That could be in a fully managed model. We'll talk about that later, or you guys can ask me offline if you're really interested. Or it becomes a true client GCC model and transfers into a sort of build, operate, transfer structure. We also see hybrids. So those build, operate, transfers can become cohabitated with that client, where we're operating partially with client resources, partially with our resources, and the transfer of those resources comes in all different shapes. And last thing I'll talk about is these become co-innovation hubs. When I worked at Fox, decade plus ago, we stacked different service providers on different floors, but we all operated with the exact same marching orders to get the exact same outcomes. We're doing the same thing, but in a borderless fashion. So think of these demilitarized zones as things that can operate anywhere with your competitors, with your clients, and if you fund them the right way long-term, they become a capital asset. And a lot of what we're doing is we're designing revenue-based centers 5 years from now that have significant opportunities for clients to productize what it is they're doing, for you to fund them, and for us to create a much higher margin profile than we'd ever see in any type of outsourcing deal structure. And I think we're about to wrap up here, but Akshay, maybe talk a little bit about what we're doing.
Yep. So I think just to bring it home, what are we doing and how are we looking at it? So our core proposition remains the same. Some things have not changed in the 20 plus years that Avasant has existed. We really are truly independent. Our goal, mission is to just provide that unbiased advice to the client in terms of whatever model works for the client in terms of the outcomes that they want to achieve. So all the models that Matt talked about, we're very model agnostic. We want to do what the right thing for client is, right? We're not a service provider. We're not intending to become one. So we're not a competition to you. We're not trying to set this up for them. Our goal really is to help them partner with the right players, players in the ecosystem to really get those outcomes going, right?
DNA's in deal making's in our blood, so we're going to help design the best possible solution that makes the most sense for the client, but we're going to work alongside you, right? If you've never done a hybrid deal, come to us. We'll help you design a hybrid deal. We'll show you how you make money on those solutions. We're agnostic to the operating model. The clients are going to come with different needs. There is about 8 flavors of outsourcing. There's about 35 flavors of the way a GCC construct could take place. And so if you need advice on that along the way, we're certainly ones who are
Because some of the commercial constructs and contract structures and all of those are very quickly evolving. So they need hand-holding. The clients need hand-holding in terms of that gives them that flexibility, that gives them that control, and gives them that clarity in terms of how to approach pricing, right? And we've made significant investments to assist our clients, service providers, to get there, right? Over the last few years, we've been expanding into some of the other geographies. We opened an office out of Philippines earlier this year. But all of these geographies, Mexico, Spain, India, even UAE, I mean, there's a lot of good financial services activity happening there. So all of these zones, we have on-ground teams, which are really helping clients think through the risks, the challenges, the pricing, all of that. Okay? A lot of investment continues to be done in the entire research and data stack. So we have a very solid, robust platform on GCC intelligence, all the 2,000 plus GCCs, what are they buying, who are they buying from, the scale, the pricing, the cost, all of that. So that really helps us define the business case for these customers and then really give them a good proposition on it. And then, of course, the radar views and special studies, like the one that I showed you before, we've been investing in. And then we've been enhancing our advisory offerings, really for the greenfield setup, for expansion, for divestitures. Matt talked about all the different models. And this is not just a simple transaction. There is a significant amount of cultural change, organizational change management. There's a lot of different activities and flavors that need to be done to really get the client the true value out of a GCC initiative.
You guys can quote me on this one. I think me and Akshay developed this quote together, but this wave we think is bigger than outsourcing, right? This whole GCC wave combined with the AI infusion, this is the new substrate where AI, agentic solutions, and human talent essentially fuse together in broader upstream client solutions. So if you provide the scaffolding, if you can provide the tech overlay, you'll become indispensable to a client in the way they evolve their offerings in the future. If you stay stuck in the old model, your clients will build it, but they'll build it without you. So that's our advice on GCCs.
Great. Thank you so much.